Today we're going to be making a salicylic acid lotion, but without all the issues that usually come with working with salicylic acid. This is notorious for being difficult to dissolve and recrystallising after the product's been made, and many people avoid working with it because of that. However, thanks to a new innovation, we now have Salicylic 40, which is an easily water-soluble version of salicylic acid. When included in the cool-down phase of aqueous formulations, it's easily incorporated. You just need to avoid using it with AHAs, as that can trigger the recrystallization. You can buy Salicylic 40 from theformulary.co.uk, hybridingredients.co.uk, trulux.com, and also from makingcosmetics.com in the USA. They sell it under the name Salicylic Acid Solution. Now, I did find a few things when I made this. The first time I made this, I mistakenly just went by the supplier information, which failed to mention non-ionic emulsifiers. So I ended up going with my go-to BTMS 50, a cationic emulsifier. It instantly thinned out upon the addition of Salicylic 40, and I had assumed it was the incompatible charge after checking with the manufacturer's guidelines. However, now after 5 days, it appears to have thickened up and remained stable. So it may be that the recommended emulsifiers are non-ionic, but others will still work. You'd need to do further experimentation and some reading yourself. And also just note that according to a warning on Making Cosmetics website about salicylic acid should be used with caution in patients with chronic renal kidney insufficiency, gastric ulcer, severe anemia, patients intolerant to salicylic or diabetes, and avoid prolonged or excessive use on a large area of the body or on broken, inflamed skin. Avoid contact with eyes, mouth, and other mucous membrane. It should also be used with caution on extremities of patients with impaired peripheral circulation. That's what it says on the Making Cosmetics website, so just to put that in there before we start making. So let's get on with the lotion, and I'll show you exactly what I used and how it turned out. So while I was chatting about the reason we're using these ingredients, you saw me weigh out everything. Don't worry, you haven't missed anything. I'm going to go through adding everything together now. This is the Salicylic 40, and I'll put the INCI name underneath in case you want to search for that in your country. It's quite a thick, viscous liquid, and it should be added in the water phase if you're not heating, or in your cool down phase under 40 degrees. Okay, here we go. So let's put all that together. I'm adding my distilled water to my glycerin. The glycerin is the humectant and the water is our solvent dilutant base for the cream. And then I added some aloe vera because it's soothing and anti-inflammatory. And we're just going to mix those together to make sure that they're combined, and we'll set that aside. We'll want to weigh this beaker, including the water and the beaker weight, and note that down because we'll want to add back any water lost to evaporation after it's heated. I should add that the purpose of this cream is for stopping inflammation and for helping with conditions like acne. If you're not used to using salicylic acid, then use a low amount to begin with. Then you're seeing me start on phase B, which is the oil phase, and we added some flaxseed oil. This is an anti-inflammatory oil full of omega-3 fatty acids. It reduces red skin and irritation. Acne, psoriasis, rosacea and eczema can be improved by the use of the oil. And then we added some rice bran oil. This is a non-comedogenic oil that does not clog pores. It has anti-inflammatory properties and soothes and softens the skin. Then we're adding almond butter. This helps to reduce inflammation and soothe irritated skin. Then we're going to need some emulsifying wax. This is cetyl alcohol Cetereth 20 emulsifying wax, specifically INCI, which is a non-ionic emulsifier that will blend oil and water together to form an emulsion. You then saw me add some additional cetyl alcohol, which helps with the spreadability and luxurious feel of the product, and it aids stability. You could swap this out for cetyl alcohol if you prefer. Then we're going to take both of our phases and heat them in a water bath until phase B has melted and they're both around the same temperature. Once melted, you can take off the heat and weigh your water phase and replace any water lost to evaporation. Give them a stir and then pour the water phase into the oil phase, and you're going to need your stick blender to shear mix this into an emulsion. This will take just a little while, and try not to move the stick blender around too much. Once that's emulsified, you can leave that to cool, and we want to let it cool down to 40 degrees C so that it doesn't compromise any of our cool down ingredients. If you stir it periodically as it cools down, you'll find it thickens up quite nicely. Then once it has reached 40 degrees C or lower, you can add your cool down phase ingredients, of which the first we're going to put in is our preservative and our vitamin E. The preservative I'm using is Saligard PCG because it works well with non-ionic emulsifiers, and it's also good in a wide pH range because we need to keep the pH to around 3 or 4 for this particular formulation, so that's perfect. And of course the vitamin E is our antioxidant. You can stir that in by hand for the moment, but just make sure it's really thoroughly incorporated. Then, if you have an overhead propeller mixer, you will need to get that out. The propeller stirrers are suggested by the manufacturer to incorporate the Salicylic 40, so ideally you want to follow manufacturer's guidelines to get the best results. Sadly, I don't have a propeller mixer or anything that could be substituted for it at the moment, so I'm going to have to add my Salicylic and stir it by hand. So I will speed that up for you because it is going to take a while. If you're going to sell this product or your own version of, you will need to do lots of stability, you'll need to test that it is as you expect it to be, and you will need to use the right equipment. So for just home use and testing this out, I'm using a hand stirrer, and I suggest following manufacturer's guidelines. You'll see as I start stirring this in, the whole mixture starts to thin out quite considerably. You remember how thick it was in the beginning. I don't know if this is normal for this type of ingredient or not, so I will do a little bit more research on that and then let you know what I find out. But it does thicken up again over time to sort of a medium viscosity lotion, so don't panic too much if it does this to you, and just watch here and I'll show you. The manufacturing info says to keep stirring while it cools down fully, so I kept stirring this and kept coming back to it until it was sort of near enough room temperature, and then I covered it and I left it overnight because I wanted to see if the viscosity changed any. I also checked the pH because we need to have a specific pH of between 3 and 4 to keep the salicylic acid doing its job, and this came in at a 3.96, so I'm not going to adjust that at all. We're just going to leave it 24 hours and see what the viscosity is like in the morning. And here we are, and you can see it's creamy, it's silky, and it's thickened up quite a lot, so I'm really happy with this consistency. So I'm going to jar it up rather than putting it in a pump bottle because it is thick enough to do that. And I've just got these little glass jars and we're going to put that in there. And I am obviously going to test this out on my arm just to see how fast it absorbs and how it feels on the skin. And it's really nice. It absorbs really quickly because there is quite a high water content in this, and the oils are quite non-greasy and they're there in low amounts. So I'll just get some on my finger and see how fast that disappears, and there's no greasy residue, no soaping or anything like that, and we've got a really nice lotion. So I hope this has made you feel a little bit better about working with salicylic acid. It is a lot easier than we thought. If you want the formula and everything, like was mentioned on screen earlier, you can find that on my Patreon, which is linked below. Thank you very much to my VIP patrons listed here. And please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to answer them if I can.